Okay, wonderful. Officially welcome to today's webinar. I am very happy to be here with Tom. Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Hello. Tom is running regular breathwork sessions at Little Yoga Space. I think you started back in October, November, can't quite remember. And we thought we jump online as a way of introducing, well, Tom, but also what breathwork really is. Everyone is talking about it. It's definitely almost, I dare say, become quite fashionable. But what is breathwork? And so I very much look forward to learning from Tom today. And after a bit of a discussion, Tom will also guide a short practice to give everyone a bit of a taster. So, Tom, we're actually almost neighbours in Baisha, which I'm very excited about. And we were just talking about it. I do have to come and visit you at your art studio. So in your other life, you do something quite different. Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about how you actually came to breathwork in the first place and what that did for you. What happened?
Okay, brilliant. Well, yeah, first of all, thank you, Catherine, for hosting this session today and for everybody for joining. So yeah, a little bit of background, I suppose, is key. I do have a space in Baisha, around the corner from the Little Yoga Studio, where I have an art studio. So I am first and foremost an artist. And when I arrived in Lisbon about 6 years ago now, I set up a space with a friend of mine, and we were running lots of workshops within our art studio. And these workshops were very much about learning. They were very much about learning about printmaking and bookbinding and how to draw. But what we began to realize very, very quickly is that people were benefiting from learning skills, but they were also benefiting in a more sort of holistic way. So inadvertently, over time, we began to essentially become art therapists. And we realized that, people getting this time away from their screens, re-engaging their creative brains and so on and so forth was a really good place for them. It's a real container for them to express themselves. Soon after that, we started doing retreats. So we started taking these various art workshops, creative workshops on retreats, and combining them with holistic elements as well. So we would do things like a meditative walk and draw through the countryside, where people would be in silence, so they wouldn't speak, but then we'd stop and we'd listen and people would journal. And we do other things like stretch and sketch, where there's a yoga practice, but combined with life drawing as well. And it was on one of these retreats that I first discovered breathwork. And I didn't know what it was. Someone said, do you want to come and do breathwork? And for most people, when they hear those two words together, they're kind of like, what is that? Breath work? And they're like, I breathe already. Do I need this? What is this thing? So I did say, what is breath work to the person? So we're doing it now. And they said, you can get really high from it. And I was thinking, that sounds interesting. Okay. I was intrigued, and I went and I did this breathwork journey, if we want to call it that. And because I had no expectation of what it was, I went in very open and very blind. I wasn't sure what to expect, and the outcome was that I had probably one of the most profound experiences of my life. And through that breathing journey and through that particular kind of breathing practice that I run now, a lot of things were unpacked for me. And I had a lot of emotional release. I had a very cleansing experience, I suppose we could call it that. And essentially from that moment, that was what brought me to breathwork. And that's what made me want to teach breathwork, to explore breathwork further, and essentially just to share this with everybody I come across and beyond. So yeah, that's in a nutshell my breathwork background.
Great. So I think it's often the case, that often facilitators of various different modalities find their way through having had that aha moment, exploring that modality for themselves. And it was probably a sort of significant moment in their own personal growth story. And then at some point decided to turn into a facilitator of that, studying it more deeply, and sharing it with the wider community. So, well, just like you asked, like what is breathwork? Breathwork, like
Breathwork, yeah.
just what is it? You can get high from it. Is that what? Maybe let's break it down into kind of baby steps. What is it that, other than just breathing, like there's a technique, I'm assuming.
Yes.
What is it that you do when you come to a breathwork journey?
Okay.
Called it.
So in the most simplistic and fewest words I can use as possible, breathwork is an active meditation. And it's a conscious way of breathing that gives us access to our unconscious minds. And within our unconscious minds, as we know, we store a lot of trauma, we store a lot of repressed emotions and perhaps struggles, things we haven't dealt with. And what we do through this practice is we tap in very relatively quickly into the subconscious and we allow things to come up. Okay, so whether that's repressed emotions, like a lot of people societally repress anger because we're told that anger isn't a positive emotion. It's not something that needs to be shared or expressed. So things like anger come up for people, trauma, childhood traumas can come up, all sorts of things can be released through that. And that's essentially what this type of breath work does. It allows you to access the subconscious mind so that you can release things that perhaps you haven't dealt with or things that are stored, trapped in the body.
So some people might think the primary point of doing any form of breathing exercise of some form is to improve your breathing, but that's not really what we're doing here.
So this is a very specific type of breathwork that I'm talking about. So this is known as many different names. It's known as conscious connected breathwork. It's known as holotropic breathwork, rebirthing breathwork, psychedelic breathwork, hence the getting high thing. And so this is a very sort of, let's say, extreme form of breathwork on the spectrum. But the breathwork spectrum is vast. And as you know, as a yoga teacher, pranayama is very important of yogic breathwork practices. So we can use different breathwork techniques. And I think sometimes this is where things get confusing for people because it does sort of encompass a whole sort of plethora of things. So you have breathwork that can give you energy. So you can breathe in certain patterns that oxygenate the body and make you more focused, more clear in your thinking. You can use breathwork to reduce your anxiety and your stress levels. So by exerting a breath for longer than you breathe in, for example, that puts you into a parasympathetic nervous state. So it means that you're in rest and digest and you're calm. So there's all these different facets of breath work. And I think that's where people begin to start getting confused because some people are like, well, I do breathing for anxiety but I'm not getting high from that. So I think it's really important to understand that there are lots of different types of breath work for different purposes. In that sense.
I think that happens as soon as somebody kind of puts a kind of a term, not trademarking it, but kind of sort of marking that term for a particular type of practice when actually it's probably been a word forever. And we've always called breathing techniques, breathing practices, breathing exercises, some form of breath work, right? But now we need to be quite mindful because people are having a slightly different expectation of breath work, which is leading more to the kind of the subconscious realm and emotional release and so on. So when you're saying we can do a particular way of practicing with the breath to access these deeper levels of our subconsciousness, is there a science behind this? Like what happens in the body?
So the theory is, I'm no scientist. Sorry, Katrin, what was that last bit?
Or whether it's more in the brain or just curious what's actually going on in the body or the brain, whichever.
Okay, so yeah, I'm no scientist. I'm going to put that out there. I'm not a doctor, but from my learning and from my training and my teaching, what I understand it as is that we live in our sort of prefrontal cortex, right? So we're constantly we live in a sensory world, and things are happening to us all the time. And actually, all of what's going on is our subconscious is stored on a kind of cellular level within our body. So everything we've ever experienced, whether that's good or bad, is stored somewhere in the body because it's a sort of defense mechanism so that we remember not to put our hand in the fire or not to jump in the cold water or whatever that may be. So when you're breathing in this certain pattern, what you're doing is you're over oxygenating the body. So you're bringing a lot of oxygen into the body. And what that does is that makes you circumnavigate the front part of the brain, and it gets you out of your mind, out of that kind of monkey mind thinking, and it basically puts you into this theta brainwave state. So on a daily basis, we live in this sort of beta state, which is the kind of stress, basically stress on the nervous system. You know, we're fighting constantly with ourselves. And so by breathing in a certain way, you basically circumnavigate it and you get into the body, you get into the subconscious. So you're almost in a kind of like dreamlike state. Now, the work part of it is it's very difficult to get there, because when you're breathing in this way, you're feeling stressed, your body is feeling stressed, and the mind is saying, don't do this. This isn't feeling good. You'll get a dry mouth. You'll get tingly sensations in your fingers. You might get very hot, very cold. So you're having a whole physiological change as well as this happens. But then once you get going, and once you sort of manage to sort of circumnavigate the brain, and if you keep trusting the process, you override it, and then you get into the body. And I know that isn't exactly a very clear scientific sort of analysis, but that is kind of the understanding of what happens.
Yeah. You mentioned also a couple of times that it can work around trauma that is held in the body, and things can come up for people, emotional releases. So I guess I'm definitely quite curious in that side of things, as a lot of my work is around being more trauma informed in our practices. And I don't know, maybe can you speak a little bit more to that? And I'm aware that using breathwork as a modality has actually also often been aligned with somatic trauma work, being kind of in that container.
Yeah, so I think the best thing in this situation is for me to talk of my own experience, essentially, isn't it? Because that's the conduit for me coming to this work. So everybody, every time they have a breathwork journey, different things happen to different people, and that's part of the sort of rich tapestry of our experience. But the general understanding is that we are all traumatized by some degree or another. You know, even if that's from birth, the trauma of birth. And then as we progress early childhood into teenage years, things are happening in our lives that are sort of traumatic events, some more extreme than others. So for me, and this will sort of tie into what we go on to talk about shortly with breathwork for men. For me, I lived I grew up in a community that was very Western, in the sense that it was British, and the repression of emotions was very much a part of life. Being expressed in my emotions wasn't something that was welcomed. As a man, I was told that I needed to not cry, to be strong, so on and so forth. So it's, I suppose it's not a particular trauma or not a particular event that happened to me, but over time, it's those things that I'm not being self-expressed. I'm pushing down if I deem it not to be the correct situation for me to share my emotions or my feelings. So with my first breathwork experience, I hadn't cried since I was 14, and I remember actively stopping crying. I was in a horrible situation in school. I really wanted to cry because it was a very unpleasant situation that I was going through, and I was like, no, Tom, you've got to stop this. You can't do this anymore. You've got to bite your lip. You've got to suck it up. You're not going to survive if you express how you're actually feeling right now. So this is what happened when I had this experience with the breath work. Suddenly something happened sometimes with breath work. You get this thing called tetany or crabby hands, as we like to call it. And it's basically you're holding on to something because you don't want to let go, because as soon as you let go, you're so scared that you're going to be exposed and you're going to be open and vulnerable. But I knew that in this situation that I got myself in with breathwork, I had to let go of whatever I was holding on to. And and I think it all stemmed from that. And then when I did let go, the emotional release was so intense and so liberating that it just, I tied those things together. So that was my experience of that. For somebody else, they may have memories that they've repressed from childhood that weren't, pleasant, whether that's violence or abuse of some kind. And as it comes up, it gives you an opportunity to process it. So, breathwork on its own is a great sort of conduit for really getting into the details of something and letting it out as it's sort of in its physical somatic way. But I think running it alongside like psychotherapy or having a psychiatrist or a therapist or a counselor of some kind is also really beneficial, because then you can use these modalities concurrently to get the best results, I'd say. Sorry, that was very long-winded. I don't know if I answered your question.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's just, I'm just wondering whether that kind of means that depending on where you're at in your own kind of situation, there might be a more appropriate or a better sort of setting for you, because obviously we can do breath work in all sorts of different settings, in groups, on retreats, short sessions, longer sessions, all day journeys, but also one-to-one. And I wonder whether it would be a fair statement or whether it's not a necessary statement. I don't know, that when you know that you are in a activated state right now and in a kind of current processing of your trauma and deep in that trauma process, breathwork could be really supportive in that, but probably better if you're working with somebody one-to-one, so that they can really hold that space for you, and going to a group session might not be the best first step. Would that be, I don't know, is that something that you would advise people, or do you check in with people before they come to your sessions? Like, how does this kind of work, and how do you even know what would be appropriate?
Exactly. And sometimes even they don't know, right? Because sometimes things can come up that they've pushed so far down that things can come up for them. And I think, yeah, it's really important not to be sort of gung-ho about this. And it's really important to be aware that different people have got different levels of things that have happened to them. So I think you're completely correct. I think if you're running a group session, obviously it's very important to provide a safe space for people. And it's very important to let them know before the session that certain things can happen to them. And that's a physical thing, because it is a very physiological thing that happens as you're doing this technique, but also emotionally, things might come up for you that hurt, and, but good things might come up as well. So I think it's really important to positively reaffirm that as well. And essentially at the end of all this, people are doing the work to release, and that it's only ever really positive outcomes in that sense. So it's only ever good that, people's, even if it is deeply traumatic, as long as the facilitator is trauma informed and knows how to support that person, if that's just following up with a text message or a phone call or recommending a counselor or a therapist, and the trauma obviously coming up isn't good, but it's worse that if the trauma is kept in, essentially, I think is the,
You touched on this already a little bit. I definitely do want to talk to you about focusing your work a lot around creating spaces for men specifically, and men-only groups. I know we have a mixed audience here, and you also do breathwork for mixed groups. And it seems like that's your focus. What makes that a different space if you're working with men only?
Yes, so men only, I think and this actually seemingly just sort of ties in with my own breathwork journey, essentially. So, identifying what I went through, I realized that a lot of men in my life, from my father to my best friends, so on and so forth, throughout school, throughout early adulthood, all experienced the similar kind of societal pressures and similar kind of things. And the idea of gifting men, so the reason, just to be clear, the reason to do this specifically for men is to allow them to have a safe space to sort of emote and let their emotions up if necessary. And I think the thing is that there's a lot of, especially in the wellness industry, there's a lot of female dominated spaces, and that's not a bad thing at all. But what I've noticed on retreats and in yoga studios and so on and so forth is often, and then speaking to men subsequently, is that sometimes men don't feel like they can go into those spaces, or if they do go in and they do something like breathwork, they can't let themselves go, or so. I think it's really important to create spaces for men and say to them, you're allowed to come and do these things. And actually, there is a support network for you on a thing. And the other thing is, I think, you know, the industry has cottoned onto that as well. So you'll see a lot of breath work that's a bit kind of like Wim Hof. He's the sort of tag word, isn't he? And you see them sort of without their tops off, running up mountains and sort of and swimming and jumping in lakes and ice. And, you know, and that's another thing I want to get away from as well, because not all men are like that. Not all men want to be in the tribe. But, you know, that there are sensitive men who want a safe space to go to, but that may not be that available to them. And I think it's just an important, you know, space to carve out for those kinds of men. For me, Catherine, I'm just trying to hold space for men like me.
Well, like we said already, you know, like I think a lot of the work that we do comes out from our own deepest wounds, you know, and from there we create spaces that we feel are needed, because we at some point come to realize we're not the only ones going through those stories or experiencing or having those experiences. So, and you know, I'm so delighted. We used to have a men's group at the studio, and for sure, we have more female teachers, we have more female participants at the studio, and we have women's circles, and they're also very important. And we work around fertility and hormones and, you know, all those really important things. And I just so want to create more spaces of affiliation for different groups of people, so that you have somebody else to share your felt experience with, and they will understand a lot more what that is like. I will never understand what it is like to live the life of a man, and you know, and vice versa. And I won't have that felt experience of something that I just haven't lived, or that I am not, or how I don't identify. And so I'm really excited to bring people in with different experiences, and creating different groups of affiliation, so that we create these spaces for this work to happen. So I know you also have a little guided practice prepared. Anything we need for that before we start that, or is it just like, well, you breathe, so off you go?
So what I thought I would do for you guys to sort of round off this webinar is to do a guided practice. It's going to be about 20 minutes long. And it's going to kind of encompass a few different elements of breathwork. So the key takeaway for the whole experience is for you to feel more grounded, connected to yourself, to the environment around you. It's going to reduce your anxiety, reduce any stress you might be feeling from your day at work, and so on and so forth. You're probably going to sleep really well tonight as well. But we're not going to go deep into the deep diving, you know, altered states of consciousness practice. But what we are going to do is something called breath holding, which is pretty self-explanatory in itself. So we're going to do a few rounds of breath holding, and this is really great for just general well-being. It's an active meditation, so you have the same sort of benefits you do with meditation. You can clear the mind, clear the body. It improves lung capacity, because we're going to be holding our breath for a little while. It can reduce inflammation in the body, and generally it's just going to give you a little bit of a boost, and it's going to sort of purify you. You may get a few sensations that you feel when you do the deeper work. So when you do the deeper work, people tend to get a little bit lightheaded. They get maybe a little bit of tingling, and so on and so forth. You may get hot, you may get a little bit cold, but none of those things are anything to worry about. You're perfectly safe, okay? And if it does get too much, then you can just come back to a normal breath and breathe normally, and you'll be fine. So what we're going to do 3 rounds. It's not going to be too excessive, and so we're going to be breathing in and out in a certain pattern. We're going to be breathing in for 4 seconds through the nose, and we're going to be breathing out through the nose or the mouth, completely up to you, but important to breathe through the nose. We're going to keep the breath connected, so no pauses in between the inhale or the exhale. And then after a few minutes, we are going to empty our lungs. We're going to hold our breath on the out breath for 30 seconds. And then after 30 seconds, we're going to inhale, hold for 30 seconds. And then we're going to come back, do a second round where we do 45 seconds. And then the last round, we'll do 60 seconds out and 60 seconds in. Okay, does that sound clear? Is that all good? So yeah, we're just going to get into a comfortable position for this. So you can either sit on the floor, sit in a chair, maybe with your back straight. And yeah, just coming into a sense of relaxation, and maybe just shutting down the eyes and just kind of scanning the body from the top of the head, coming down, relaxing that space between the eyes, relaxing your jaw, relaxing your shoulders, down through your torso, feeling your sit bones on your chair or on the floor, feeling your feet grounded into the earth. And just noticing our breath at the moment without manipulating it or controlling it, noticing it coming in and out. And what we're going to do just to prepare for this practice is we're just going to take some breaths and we're going to be breathing into the belly. So for most of us on a daily basis, we are breathing up here in the top of our lungs. We're not using our full breath, our full lung capacity. So before we begin with the breath holding, I'd like you guys just to take your index finger and your middle fingers on both hands and just put them on your bellies. So gently rest them on your belly, and I just want you to begin to focus your breath on your belly. So as you breathe in through the nose, your belly is going to expand outwards. And then as you breathe out, your belly is going to contract inwards. So imagine you're filling up a balloon with air, and that as you breathe in through the nose, that balloon is filling up just in your belly. And then as you breathe out, that balloon is contracting. Just feeling that sensation of the belly expanding outwards and coming inwards. And then once we've got the hang of that, I'd like you guys then to take your hands and just put them above your hips, so above your hip bones. And start breathing now into the front belly and the side belly. So as you breathe in through the nose, you're going to feel that balloon expand into the front belly and into the sides. So you're really pushing outwards as you breathe in and contracting as you breathe out. Expanding on the inhale and contracting on the exhale. And then if you want to take your hands and just bring them to your upper chest now. And what we can do now is start to take full deep breaths. So breathing into the belly, into the side belly, and then into the chest. And letting it go. And suddenly, perhaps for the first time today or for the first time this week, you're suddenly taking full deep breaths and using your full lung capacity, oxygenating the blood, purifying the body. And keep breathing like that, and we're going to begin our breath holding practice very shortly. So what we're going to be doing is, as I said, we're going to be breathing in for 4 seconds. We're going to be breathing out for 4 seconds without any pauses between our breaths. And then at the end of about 2 minutes or so, we're going to hold our breath on the out breath for 30 seconds. We're going to inhale and hold for another 30 seconds, okay? And we're going to be taking full deep breaths for this. So we're going to be breathing into the belly, into the chest and releasing. Breathing through the nose and out of the nose, out of the mouth, up to you. So emptying the lungs now. Inhale. Exhale. Let's begin. In, 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4. 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 In, out. In, out. In, out. In, out. And we're here for another 20 seconds or so. So keep breathing. In, 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4. In, out. In, out. In, out. And big inhale. And exhale. And we're going to hold here for 30 seconds. Now, one thing I want you both, all of you, to remember is that you're full of oxygen, you're fully oxygenated, and you don't actually need to breathe. You've got 15 seconds to go. You're perfectly safe. Don't listen to your mind. You've got 5 more seconds. And big inhale all together, filling the lungs. And we're going to hold here for another 30 seconds. And just 5 more seconds to go. And release. Just coming momentarily back to a normal breath, unforced. Noticing how you're feeling. Did you experience any sensations in the body? And we're going to start our second round. Just a second. Again, you can close down the eyes. Exhaling. And now we can breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4. In, out. 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 So keep going. Another 20 seconds to go. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Big inhale. And exhale. And we're going to hold here. And we're here for 45 seconds this time. Just remember, you're full of oxygen, you're full of life. And even if your mind tells you you need to breathe, you really don't. See if you can hold on. Just 15 more seconds. And we take a big inhale all together. Inhale. We can hold here. Doing really well, keep holding, got 15 seconds to go. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let it go. Just coming back to a normal breath for the moment, maybe feeling a few sensations. All is well, perfectly safe. Okay, we're going to do our final round now. And then after this, we're going to hold on the out breath for 60 seconds, inhale and hold for another 60. If you do need to take a sip of air at any point or you need to breathe, you can sip it up and see if you can hold for a bit longer. But for the moment, let's exhale. And we're going to go a little bit deeper, a little bit quicker. And let's inhale, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, out. In, out, 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 in, out. In, out, in, out, in, out. Keep going, we've got 25 seconds to go. Finding your rhythm, finding your flow. And big inhale. And exhale. We're going to hold here for a minute. If you want to bring any movement, if there's anything your body wants to do, feel free to do it. You're halfway through, doing really well. Remember, you're full of oxygen, you don't need to breathe. Ten seconds to go. Okay, we can take a big inhale all together, filling the lungs. We can hold here. You've got this, you're full of oxygen, you're full of life, you don't need to breathe. You've got 30 seconds to go. Keep going. If you do want to take a little sip of air, you can. Almost there, guys. 10 more seconds. Keep going. You've got it. 3, 2, 1, and let it go. And when you're ready, you can very gently come back to the Zoom call. How are you feeling, Katrin?
That's great. Thank you so much for this practice. I love that moment after these really beautiful, deep meditative practices when you open your eyes and the world just seems so much clearer. I need to get my eyes tested soon, and I think maybe I should do this practice before having my eyes tested. I feel like I'll probably be able to read those letters much better. Might not need reading glasses, I don't know. But yeah, wonderful. And just really fascinating how you obviously start any kind of practice a little bit in your mind, and you just have to surrender to the space of the practice. In the beginning, I'm like, I can count along, and that keeps me safe if I just count. And then at some point, you're just like, nah, it's just not going to really help you if you keep counting, and to just be in that space that you were holding so nicely for us. So, thank you.
Thank you. And did you find it difficult with the breath holding? Or did you have a preconceived idea that you wouldn't be able to hold your breath for that long?
Well, I teach breathing. I do breathing from a yogic perspective, and I know how challenging the retention is at the bottom of the exhale, and it's personally also not necessarily my most favorite place, but I do know that once you actually have a good practice, that breath retention or that suspension of the breath comes much easier. So I knew that was the process, obviously, and it helps in that because you've had the experience. But I'm not sure the last time I held my breath out for an entire minute at the end of the exhale, and I was able to do that going into it, after a stressful day, reasonably cold, relatively quickly. So that's amazing,
Should we try 5 minutes now then?
Yeah, easy. I'm gonna turn us into like free divers, right? Yeah, but it's totally in your mind, and it's really helpful to have that reminder. You are fine. You know, this is in your mind. If you feel like you need to take a breath, okay, go ahead, take a breath. And it is really kind of it's getting kind of hold of yeah.
I think that's a really good point of giving that sense of indication of you know, your monkey mind coming into the fore, and that sort of that mind we're listening to all day that's telling us, no, you're not good, or you can't do this, or you can't handle it, you know, and that feeling of like, you need to breathe now, I need to keep you alive. Sometimes feeling like you're underwater and you need to come up for air. But if you can just say to it, you know what, no, I'm fine, I don't need you right now, you can step away. And then then you're getting that separation, I think, which is the beginnings of those deeper breath journeys, where you're like, you're getting out of your own way and you're letting that stuff, you know. And I think even that in itself, there's a moment's peace and there's a respite from those thoughts that are churning. So yeah. Any physical sensations?
Um, I had definitely a little bit of like neck contraction at some point, which I was able to sit with though, and then let that go. So it was nice. Didn't have so much tingling or anything, which I do sometimes get when I do breathing practices more intensely. But that was actually, I normally, it's interesting actually, because, you know, now we're sitting in the Zoom thing, and I allowed myself to just sit in a chair, leaning back against the back of a chair, and I'm like, gosh, you know, I always invite people to do this. I never do it myself. And I really appreciated the support from sitting like this with both feet planted on the floor. There was nothing kind of starting to complain, nothing falling asleep. So I think also so important that we really make sure that we choose a comfortable position that's like 200% accessible to us, and not just kind of like, but I can sit cross-legged if I have to for 20 minutes. Yeah, great. But is that really as supportive as it kind of needs to be, you know? Yeah, so good reminder to myself. Maybe do a little bit more of what I preach to people all the time. Make sure you sit comfortably. I don't know whether there are any other questions here, not just from me. Feel free to use the chat if you want, or obviously you can also turn your sound on or share your experience. I'm sure Tom would love to know also how it was for you. Tom, when we come to a session with you, it's usually an hour and a half, is that right? So as a group session?
It is an hour and a half, yeah.
So it starts with an orientation, and then the practice.
Yeah, so I think often, you know, an hour and a half isn't actually that long to do these practices. So it's really important, you know, so many things happen, so you've got to get people feeling comfortable. And I always open the circle, as if we want to call it a circle, with people introducing themselves, talking a bit about their day and so on and so forth, and just get them really grounded in themselves. So, you know, if that's just having a quick meditation where you're sitting and doing as we did and just sort of doing a body scan just to get into their bodies and their space, I then tend to explain the side effects. So the perhaps negative side effects, if you want to call them that, the crabby hands and things that can come up for them. And then the fact that they may experience a lot of emotional release as well. Things may come up, and just to ride with it, you know, because if that stuff's coming up, it's meant to come up. It's not meant to be held in here and kept, you know, locked in. So I tell them that. We go through contraindications, as they're known. So people with various, you know, medical issues, and that can be anything from if they're pregnant. I know it's not a medical issue, but if they've got if they're pregnant, or if they've got glaucoma, for example, or heart conditions, so on and so forth. We talk about those. So really creating a safe space for something that could potentially be very, you know, exposing. We then tend to do the practice. Sometimes I do a similar practice if people are still feeling a bit nervous to what we just did. So they're getting into their bodies a bit more and they're feeling those slight changes. Then we do the deeper practice. And then at the end, it's so important to not only bring people out gently, so they have a good 20 minutes of lying in silent, with music, but lying in a peaceful repose. And then we do a little bit of creative reintegration at the end as well. So, I think it's so important for people to come, when they come back to space, to have still a little bit of time in their conscious mind to be like, okay, well, I want to write down what happened because I want to process it, or I give them crayons and things so they can use. Often people see a lot of color, so that they can color or draw shapes. Some people will draw sort of scenes or things that came up for them. And then we also have a closing circle and a sharing circle. So people at the end, they don't have to, their journeys are completely for them, but if they want to share, if they want to emote what they went through, they can. And actually it tends to take one person and then everyone's like, I want, for me it was this, for me it was that. And wildly different experiences. And then in the preceding days, there's always follow-ups and just check-ins as well, because you could, once those valves are opened, you can feel quite exposed and quite vulnerable for a few days, especially if it's the first time. So
yeah. Oh, we spoke a little bit about that before we started the call. How obviously breathwork has become really quite fashionable, because I think people were really seeking that high and that big experience and the kind of bigger extremes and that ecstatic kind of place, but then are often left hanging, potentially crashing even harder after, because the integration piece was missing, which is just so crucial, especially when we're doing modalities where we're really tapping into quite profound experiences, but also real depth of kind of stories that are embedded in our bodies. And so, I guess when anybody is looking for facilitators, like with anything that's become a bit of a fashion, that's great because more people talk about it. There is more awareness. We're breaking down some stigma. We are maybe also a bit more open to talk about the stories themselves and the pain and the struggle. So all of that is obviously positive, but there's always that side where a lot of people suddenly become breathwork facilitators with not that much integrity, not that much training, or not enough, know-how. And then what suffers is that integration piece. Well, the education, I would say, I guess, and then most importantly, that integration piece. So it's really great to know that obviously you're taking care of that. And I guess right from the start, we all set this conversation, how really that's part of holding that space for this kind of work. So important. Yeah. There's a comment here also, thank you for this. Had a similar reaction with my neck and also felt a bit dizzy, but didn't last too long. So great. And does it feel great now or a bit? Yeah, okay. Great.
I've never had a negative outcome from breathwork, which is good. But things may have come up that were negative, but the overall experience has always been a very deeply positive one.
Yeah, great. And I think it's such a powerful modality in that space of the somatic practices for growth. So yeah. If there are no other questions, it's just gone 8 o'clock. So on time. It's like a first for me. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time. Anything you want to add as a closing comment?
Oh God, that's a lot of pressure, isn't it? I think I think just give it a go. You don't have to go in all deep, and it may not be the modality view. And I get a lot of people actually talking about the facilitation side of things as well, where they have gone through facilitators they don't like, and that could be anything from they don't like the music they play or the angle they teach from, and so much, but don't give up on it just because the teacher you had or the facilitator wasn't a fit for you. It's almost like a therapist, isn't it? Some people go to therapy, they have a bad experience. So keep open-minded, and just remember that breathwork isn't just this extreme sport that people, or a passing fad. It has so many different elements and so many different avenues that can be catered and suited to you. So yeah, I think it's an amazing modality, and give it a go if you haven't. And if you hadn't, didn't like it, then give it another go somewhere else. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Well, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story, for the practice, and for doing the work that you do. So there's a weekly Breathwork for Men's class on Tuesdays, Tuesday evenings at 6 o'clock. But we have now started a monthly a mixture of mixed breath work session every second Monday of the month at 8 o'clock. So there's a mixed group. So hopefully we'll see some people there. And I guess that just leaves me to wish you all a very nice evening.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for this webinar.
Take care, everyone.
And for the invitation.
My pleasure. Welcome. Thank you. Take care.